artist Lloyd Rees gave me the Lane Cove Art Prize. How lucky can you be? What I was going to tell you first was how I came to printmaking and artist books. Well, when I finished school, I decided to go to the East Sydney Tech, which is now the National Art School. And so I enrolled there. I did the entrance exam, and I think I did get a scholarship to start. And so I started and did the preliminary, all different subjects like sculpture, painting, etc. And then went into design, where I had this very inspiring teacher, Phyllis Shillito. She was very, very inspiring. You've no idea how hard she had us working, and we were all absolutely striving to do our best. And she connected us with outside things like getting us to do packets for Jaffas and outside things, so as we'd be hoping we'd be able to connect with the outside world. For our exam, we had to have an exhibition. A large part of my work that I put up for the exhibition has been collected by the Powerhouse. One thing I was very worried about was not being able to get employment, and Miss Shillito was friendly with the head OT at Concord Hospital. And as she had all these extra patients in the OT because of all the people coming back from the war, she employed 4 of us as OT assistants at Concord Hospital. We did making baskets, which wasn't very successful from my point of view because my fingers all disintegrated, but we did leather work, and we did a certain amount of drawing. I was only there for about a bit over a year when I got engaged and got married. After I was married, I worked for a while at the Red Cross in town teaching weaving. I decided that actual artwork plus looking after children plus a husband that was an anaesthetist and very, very busy, a lot of late hours and everything, it wouldn't be practical to do artwork. The children would probably escape or eat the paints or something like that. Once everyone went to school, I realised I could get back to my artwork, so I went to the Willoughby Art Centre to get started again and joined a painting class, and then I joined a printmaking class under Sue Buckley, and she taught lithography, and she also was a very inspiring teacher. I decided I definitely wanted to stick to printmaking. Lithography, which does come from stone, but the stones are very heavy, and I have printed with them, and that's very good. But you can get aluminium plates that are roughed up to the surface of the same surface as the stone, and you just draw on this with grease, and then you put water on it, and then you roll up the colours. And you can do, this is a lithograph that I did quite a while ago, and you can see how you can get very interesting colours, and you can overlap for other colours, and compared with silk screen, you can get the colours much thinner, and you can get a very large amount of detail and very thin lines. And then I learned etching with Betty Rooney, and also I did have the opportunity, with George having study leave overseas, and once he decided where it was, I fossicked around and found an art school to go to. First one I went to was this Sir John Cass College of Art and Mathematics at Aldgate East in London. And that was very, very good indeed. That one was done in England. The top one was done at this Sir John Cass College of Art and Mathematics. I think that was the best one I did over there. Oh, this is a print that I did from a drawing that I did in a summer school over in America, in the Chautauqua Institute, which was another very interesting experience. Having had the classes at the Willoughby Art Centre, I then had a studio day that you could go and work on your own at Willoughby, and 4 of us decided that we wanted to do our art more often, and we found a single-storey terrace that had a very large garage and also parking spaces and also garden between the house and the garage, and the garage was easy to convert into a studio. The studio works for 2 people to work together, so we would have often one day on your own and one day with someone, and of course there were always extra days at the weekend where you could work, because having the studio here and setting aside 2 days to come, you would come and you decided on some project or something like that, and you were going to work on it, and if you didn't think it was going so well or so on, you would keep working here and you'd come the next day. And also having the company of other people, which led to very much being able to get your work out there a bit more. And I joined some societies, and I just realised that it was a very, very big advantage. I cannot imagine that I would have been, no matter how beautiful a studio I'd had at home, that I would have been there working in the same way as I was able to work at this studio, with the association with other people and the whole thing. We've been here about 40 years, I think. Well, Janet has died, Janet Milton. I was very good friends with her. And Helen Best and Tanya, I'm still working with them. Oh, we're very good friends. I was still doing a lot of lithography, because I'd just come from working with Sue, and then I gradually went on to more etching. And then I kept on both, whichever I want to do. The basic way is very simple, but actually when you come to do it, it's not so easy. But what you do, you have this roughed up surface, so you draw in any sort of, you can draw in any sort of grease. I mean, you put button fat on it, you could, anything, and then you put water all over the plate, and you have a piece of glass with, say, red ink here. And so when I roll the red ink like that, that will go red. So, and you get you can see in this one, you get absolutely beautiful detail of every stroke you've drawn. And so this has to then go through a press. If you want to do an addition, you do have to use chemicals to stabilise the image, And that is where it makes it not such an easy process, because of course with all printmaking things can very easily go wrong. You either have happy accidents or things going wrong. And then sometimes you have everything going right. So this is an example of a etching plate, which is that would have gone into the acid masses of times to get the original drawing, and then this has offset and also deep etch, and that ends up being a print like this. And the colours are put on with pieces of cardboard that you roll up with the colour that you want to put on, and that would go onto there and go through the press. So all these, this would have masses of, about millions of this goes onto there. This would all be black and white, and then there'd be yellow on this, and that would go onto there. Collograph is also when you use a flat piece of cardboard. But anyway, I don't know where that's gone. Probably find it eventually. Anyway, what this is, you can take a piece of cardboard and you can stick things on, or you can scratch, or you can do whatever you think of, and then you cover it all with shellac, and then you can treat it as an etching plate. You can rub all the ink on, and then you can rub it off. And the idea is, oh well, that is the plate for this.
The pencil shavings up there.
And then it's easy to see with this one, because I mean you don't get anything to do with what colour you use there. So this is this. And then each one of these, I've used a tiny little bit of watercolour in each print. And then in 1992, I realised that a lot of my work was in series, and I wanted people to look at them one after the other, and also in a certain order. So I went to Primrose Park and learnt bookbinding. I did this lithograph called Time. I actually called a lot of those Time Flies, but I thought of the idea of making a bit of a story about how you go through a whole day, or you go through a whole life. And that's what, you could pass that around, that's what that is related to. And I had a very interesting and good teacher, Daphne Dobbin, and I got together with her and I told her what I wanted to do, that I wanted to have my prints together so as people could look at them. And she said, oh, do you want to loosely put them together so someone could possibly have them and take it apart and put them on the wall? And I said, no, 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 that's not anything I want to do. So with her, we worked out this, what I call French simplicity binding, which is a firmly bound book with a proper spine and quite sturdy, and that's the type of book binding I've been doing all along since then. The book that made me think of the idea of actually doing the book binding is a book called In My House, and I had set up little, it was a book of miniatures, 2-plate etching miniatures, and I set up little still life in my house containing objects that had been given to me either by members of the family or close friends. I've been able to exhibit a whole table of my artist books. First in San Francisco at a special artist book fair called Codex, and that is quite large and very, very good for artist books. And since then I was able to take this group of artist books to Brisbane at one of the universities where they had a similar thing. And just a week ago I was lucky enough to be able to have a table and exhibit these books at Sydney Contemporary. So that was very, very good. So that book has been included in all those exhibitions. I'm lucky enough to have 9 of my books in the library. They've been collected over the years, over 3 different times actually. So I'm really thrilled about that. They have been purchased by quite a few good places, like the Mitchell Library and the Library in Canberra and Artspace Mackay, and a few collectors and private people. In America, one was collected by a university in Virginia. So you can see that plate. You can easily see that that is this. And so what I did with this one, I printed several in all different tones from that plate, some dark and some light. And the idea of this was to try and create different moods and interesting colours.
Did you paint that with watercolour?
So no, these are all painted. These are all painted with
on the plate? Or?
No, on this. In this book, which is using a lot of the same plates, you can also ink up the plate. You know how you ink up the plate and then you wipe all the ink off and you've just got the black? If you put a tiny little bit of detergent in a good quality watercolour, you can then paint the colours on the plate. I do want people to see my books, and if you have an artist's book sitting in a glass case at an exhibition, I mean, you don't really see the thing at all. And also they do have a feel. My covers, the way I do them with the print and the surface I put on them, they're definitely an object. And I like to plan the cover and then the end papers and then what I write. I mean, it definitely is a whole thing that is planned to be looked at in this order. And also you are looking at printmaking without any glass, and with a lot of the etchings there's quite a bit of embossing. But even with the lithographs, there's a certain thing you see by looking at the ink on the paper. If you look in, you can see often how it's embossed a bit. So that was the whole idea of this book, was really purely, well, I wanted to use the images and see how they'd overlap. I did that one first actually. So this is, see, this is actually this plate. So it's easy to see that. So when you have an artist's book, you have the opportunity to try and have this piece of work looked at, and then you turn over the page and you can get either a planned surprise or you can get a harmony. So you can, there are a few extra things that you can plan with an artist's book than just exhibiting work on the wall. This is waiting and chatting. And this is a wicket with the excitement of a wicket. Well, I've always liked drawing things. Some of my projects have been formed from these two societies that I belong to, the Print Circle and the Sydney Printmakers, a lot of people, or some of the people in those societies, aren't so keen on themes, which I think makes an exhibition hang together better. But I've often found that when they settle on a theme and I have to do a work to that theme, that often does give me new ideas. Mainly I've just been working all along from one sort of idea to another. Actually, Tanya Crothers thought of the idea because with printmaking it's very hard to do a very big work because you're constricted by the size of the press. So she thought of the idea of having 12 people and we all did a work that was related. This was a theme that actually I did think of the idea of having the flag as if it was a transparent piece of material, and we all did something and we called it Behind the Flag, preferably related to Australia or ourselves. Well, very early in the piece, one of my first lithographs was on people, but I decided to do people in a grandstand. So I actually did 3 prints of these people in a grandstand, and I've been able to use those in books I've done in watching tennis and watching cricket, and I was able to make them into a big print by making 2 so as they joined together, which I could use for the 50th anniversary of the Sydney Printmakers. So that was one series. Another series I did was very much on Sydney Harbour and the Opera House. At that stage I was able to exhibit those at a Australian Craftworks in the Rocks, and that might have been a bit of encouragement to do work that was associated with Sydney Harbour and the Opera House. I used my family to pose for me for the figures. With the grandstand, I had to set out the positions of the seats from a photograph that I got enlarged, and then I marked the seats on my etching plate and had my friends and relations and drew there onto the plate or directly from them in these various positions. But they didn't have to be the same pose, but that's how I did that. I have to draw the figures directly onto the plate, so it's an agonising situation once I've done some, that the next one I'll completely mess up. But so far, although the figures look a bit strange, the prints have worked out to a reasonable extent. I was so pestered by people that seemed to, you know, I couldn't concentrate on drawing it, so I eventually had to take a photograph to do it by. But I did want to do it by doing the drawing. Anyway, it worked out well in the end and isn't really like the photograph. It's a tremendous number of mixed media that I can hardly remember what I did. Oh, when I do especially when I first started doing the books, I did 3 prints that were for the books, which were on joined up paper, and then the same print I would print for a separate print. Say I would print 7 more that could be used to exhibit as a separate print. I've done so I can do 3 copies of the book, and I usually make up 2 copies, and then I have another copy that I can make up later on if I want to, as a book. And also doing the 3 copies, if you mess up one, or hopefully not mess up more than one, you'll at least have something left. Oh, at the moment I'm working on some small books. I've just done a project on the sound of colour, and that started off because our Print Circle exhibition in Armidale had the theme of music box. So I started off with this idea of the sound of colour, and I did large prints for that, actually quite large prints for that, and then I did a book, and then I did a small book, and so now I've been doing some small books on different subjects which are based very much on colour. It's actually the same image. The main interest is the fact that the colour changes. I tried to think up ideas so she'd get an impact with the next page, mainly through the colour with the same image. I've done a print, the grandstand, the picnic, and I want to do a large print on the park. So that is the thing about printmaking and drawing and painting. When you do printmaking, it seems to get a different sort of detailed look. For instance, you wouldn't think you'd never think that really looked like a painting, because it has and also you have the embossing. So it's printmaking, I think, makes you get very positive, because you know you're going to do several of them. I don't know why it is. Betty Rooney, who taught etching and is well-known printmaker, in her class she said, "Where there's metal, there's still hope." So that meant, you know, if you have this plate you don't think's any good, you can put it in the acid, you can eat it right through to the bottom of the plate or right through to a hole. So I'm always thinking of her remarks when I'm doing an etching, where there's metal, there's still hope.